Hi guys. I know it's been 2 months since I've uploaded a video, but I'm back, and after doing some research on another video topic, I've decided to actually go ahead and do my eighth best MC of all time. That is Paul Bosian's number 8 rapper, MC, or hip hop lyricist of all time. And that artist is Rakim. Now, and a lot of older heads, or for a lot of older hip hop heads or hip hop fans, they would have Rakim higher on their list. I have him at number 8. And the main reason I have him at number 8 is because I think since he dropped his first album in 1987 with Eric B., who was his producer and DJ, that album being Paid in Full from 1987, I think lyricism has changed and evolved and improved in hip hop over time. So you have to count lyricists, MCs who are dropping albums consistently up to this year, 2019. So for that reason, I can't put Rakim as a top 5 or obviously as a number 1. Now Rakim, he's my number 8 of all time hip hop lyricist. And the reason I have him at that spot is that he was so influential. Before I get more into this video, by the way, guys, is going to be in 3 parts, maybe 3 20-minute parts. I'm going to upload them all in one shot. So, Rakim, his real name is Michael Griffin Jr. Rakim was born on January 28th, 1968. So he's 51 years old. Without going into great detail about wherever exactly on Long Island he was born, he's from Long Island, New York, USA. Long Island, New York State, USA. So he's from Long Island, New York, USA. Now, I firstly will mention many hip-hop critics, older in age than me, older heads, will say that Rakim invented multisyllabic rhyming. Due to my research, I would say that this is not true, that in fact Rakim did not invent multisyllabic rhyming. He adopted it early on in the mid-'80s, but he did not, and he helped develop multisyllabic rhyming in hip-hop, but he did not invent it. I would say there are certain artists that were out before Rakim. The group UTFO. For example, would be an early example of a hip-hop group that had some basic multisyllabic rhymes. Grandmaster Melle Mel of Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five would be another example. A very early Kool Keith, like very early on, would be another example, like an early 80s Kool Keith. And out of Houston, Texas, there's a rapper, K Reno, who started rapping in 1982 and was using multisyllabic rhyme schemes. Of course, KRS-One, due to being 5 years older than Rakim, I believe. And same thing with Kool Keith. I believe Kool Keith and KRS-One, and a lot of guys that were in their original group. So Scott LaRock, say, may he rest in heaven's paradise. Guys like who were around with Cool Keith, who were working with Cool Keith in the early 80s. We're using multisyllabic rhyme schemes. So the guys in Ultramagnetic MCs, for example, guys like Said G, the late great Tim Dog, may he rest in heaven's paradise, Ronnie T, Rooney Rune, Mo Love, TR Love. These guys were rapping in multisyllabic rhyme schemes, maybe slightly before Rakim. I mentioned Grandmaster Flash and Grandmaster Melly Mel, especially Grandmaster Melly Mel. Dougie Fresh, Grandmaster Kaz. If I were to pick one rapper that might have started multisyllabic rhyme schemes, it would probably be Grandmaster Kaz. Now, Grandmaster Kaz, and again, this is going to be in depth, this series of 3 videos. I'm going to get back to Rakim pretty soon. Grandmaster Kaz has been in the hip-hop game since 1976, so I would say, you know, he was a member of the Cold Crush Brothers, Grandmaster Kaz was, and he was a member of the Cold Crush Brothers along with Almighty KG, DJ Tony Tone, Easy, AD, Jerry D. Lewis, Daughter Rock, Money Raw, Rest in Paradise, DJ Outlaw, Rest in Paradise, Prince Whipperwhip, Mr. T, and Charlie Chase. I would posit that Grandmaster Kaz was the first hip-hop artist to ever rhyme in multisyllabic, complex rhyme schemes. I know I also mentioned UTFO, but Grandmaster Kaz predated UTFO. Grandmaster Kaz first picked up a mic in 1976. So this is very early on in hip-hop history. Now, as for UTFO, the members were the late great, may he rest in heaven's paradise, the educated rapper, the late great educated rapper, Dr. Ice, Kangol Kid, and Mixed Master Ice. And the song, notably, that they used multisyllabic rhyme schemes on would be their best-known single, Roxanne, Roxanne. And that was from late 83, early 1984. So that was a somewhat commercially successful single, hip-hop single, using multisyllabic rhyme schemes by UTFO from late 83, early 1984, from the hip-hop group out of Brooklyn, UTFO. And they used not overly complex rhyme schemes, but still multisyllabic rhyme schemes. And before that, probably in a lot of ciphers and things that material battles even that weren't recorded, Grandmaster Kaz since 1976 was using multisyllabic rhyme schemes. And probably before Rakim, also KRS-One was using them. The late great Scott LaRock, again, may he rest in heaven's paradise, was using them. K Reno, as early as 1982, was using them. So it's hard to put an exact timeline. I would say for sure the earliest adopter of multisyllabic rhyme schemes would have been Grandmaster Kaz. First recorded material in 1978 around, and first started writing rhymes in 1976. So definitely Grandmaster Kaz. But going back to Rakim here, Rakim, along with Big Daddy Kane of the Juice Crew, along with Cool G Rap of the Juice Crew, and along with KRS-One and Boogie Down Productions. Again, that's along with Big Daddy Kane of the Juice Crew. Along with Cool G Rap of the Juice Crew, and along with KRS-One of Boogie Down Productions, Rakim was one of 4 MCs to help really cement and popularize multisyllabic and pretty complex rhyme schemes in hip-hop and in mainstream hip-hop at the time. And Rakim is usually given, out of those 4 rappers, more credit than Kool G Rap, more credit than KRS-One, although KRS-One's seen as a huge innovator, and definitely more credit than Big Daddy Kane. But Rakim, a definite hip-hop legend. He joined up with Eric B. in 1986 in Long Island, New York. Now, Eric B. was a DJ for a radio station in New York City. They first met before they joined the group somewhere on Long Island, but as I said, Eric B. became a DJ for a radio station. I don't think it's still in operation, called WBLS in New York City. And Eric B. was friends with Rakim's brother. I believe it's Rakim's older brother. And through the friendship with Rakim's older brother, Eric B. became friends with Rakim and went to Long Island and hung out with them. At this time, they were also hanging out with Marley Marl, the leader, de facto leader of the Juice Crew. And it's not known who produced their first single. Their first single from 1986 was Eric B. is President, and that came out in 1986. It would later appear on their debut album from 1987, the legendary album Paid in Full. Now, it said for their first single, Eric B. is President from 1986, that Marley Marl was the producer. But Eric B. says, Eric B. of the duo claims he was the producer, so it's either between him or Eric B. Some have said even the late great, may he rest in heaven's paradise, Paul C. had a lot to do with it. So it's not known who really produced their first single. I believe it was Marley Marl, because Eric B. was more of a hype man for Rakim, as I'll get into later. So they released their first single in 1986, Eric B. is President. They added a B-side to that later in 1996, which is My Melody. And both Eric B. is President and My Melody would appear on their debut album, which came out, the duo's debut album, Eric B. and Rakim's debut album, Paid in Full. And Paid in Full dropped July 7th, 1987. Now, the whole album from start to finish is a masterpiece of golden age hip-hop. My personal favorite track is the first track on the album, I Ain't No Joke. So, on their first album, my favorite track is I Ain't No Joke, and I believe the track I Ain't No Joke on their first album, Paid in Full, is a track out of all the tracks that best displays Eric's what am I talking about? That best displays Rakim Allah's lyricism. That would be the first track off of Paid in Full, I Ain't No Joke. Go and listen to that track. I'll link you to it in the comment section. There's a music video for it. There's several famous hip-hop icons appear in the music video, notably Flavor Flav of Public Enemy. Also, a bit of trivia here. 13-year-old Esham, one of the co-inventors of horrorcore hip-hop, was in New York City on Long Island visiting his cousins, and Esham, a very young 13-year-old Esham, was there visiting his cousins during spring break of 1987, so March of 1987, and Esham is Visible, another hip-hop legend known for acid rap and horrorcore from Detroit. Esham was there along with his cousins in the background as one of the young kids dancing in the background in the video for Paid in Full. So they dropped their first album, Eric B. and Rakim did, in July of 1987. It wasn't until their second album, the duo's second album, which was released on July 26, 1988, just over a year later, that you would really see Rakim's lyricism develop into something special. And this is seen on the tracks from Follow the Leader, their second album, Eric B. and Rakim's second album, Follow the Leader. The tracks that impressed me, and still impress me, would be Follow the Leader, the title track, Microphone Fiend, Lyrics of Fury, and No Competition. So again, Follow the Leader, the title track, Microphone Fiend, Lyrics of Fury, and No Competition. My favorite tracks on the album are Microphone Fiend and No Competition. And you could see the lyricism of Rakim become more and more complex here as they were releasing the duo, Eric B. and Rakim, were releasing their second studio album. His lyricism and multisyllabics and flow became a lot tighter, especially on tracks like Microphone Fiend and No Competition. Their third album came out in 1990, the duo's third album. At this period, they were working with Paul C. They were working with Large Professor, and rest in paradise to Paul C., the late great Paul C. They were working with Large Professor, who was a member at the time of the hip-hop group Main Source. And they were working with DJ Mark, the 45 King, or known as the 45 King. And on their first two albums, I believe a lot of the production came from Marley Marl of the Juice Crew. But on their third album, Let the Rhythm Hit 'Em, there's production by Paul C., which the late great Paul C., rest in paradise, which went uncredited. Large Professor, who's still doing in the game today, doing hip-hop production. At the time, he was a member, like I said, of Main Source, the hip-hop group. And DJ Mark, the 45 King, also known as the 45 King. I believe Mark, the 45 King, is still active occasionally in producing hip-hop. He's a very unsung hero in hip-hop production. He's produced notable hit songs long after this in 1990, for Eminem, for example. And I'm not going to say it's a very famous song for Eminem that DJ Mark, the 45 King, produced. So go look it up and you'll learn something about a very underrated, unsung hero of hip-hop, the 45 King. So, yeah, Large Professor, Paul C. I forgot to mention that, or I should mention on Let the Rhythm Hit 'Em, that Large Professor's production was uncredited. The late great Paul C., rest in heaven's paradise, his production was uncredited, but it was the production of DJ Mark, the 45 King, was credited on here as co-production with Eric B. I believe that, personally still, that most of the production was done on this album by Paul C., R.I.P., Large Professor, and the 45 King. I do not like this album, Let the Rhythm Hit 'Em, as much as the first two albums. Probably my favorite track on the album is No Omega. And their next album, their fourth and final studio album by Eric B. and Rakim, was Don't Sweat the Technique. And my favorite two songs on the album are Know the Ledge, which was in the soundtrack for the movie Juice, starring the late great Tupac Shakur, rest in heaven's paradise, and Don't Sweat the Technique, the title track of the album. My favorite song on the album is Know the Ledge. I like Don't Sweat the Technique, which I mentioned was on the soundtrack for the film Juice, starring the late great Tupac Shakur. There's also pretty good tracks like Teach the Children, Pass the Hand Grenade, The Punisher. And this is the final album by Eric B. and Rakim as a hip-hop duo. It was released in June of 1992. And that would be their last album together. Now, it's been rumored that they are considering getting together to make another album, but I doubt that. Eric B. he's a controversial figure. He's been involved in a lot since 1992 in a lot of shady activity, apparently, in the New York City and greater New York City area. There were some after Don't Sweat the Technique was released in June of 1992. There were legal problems and label problems, and Rakim chose to go his own way. And I think that was a very wise choice for many reasons. Like I mentioned, Eric B. being involved in shady activity during that time in the early 90s and late 80s, but especially as the 90s would go on, and even to present day, Eric B. has been mentioned as somebody who is somewhat of a gangster or involved in shady activities and organized crime. I don't have any proof of this. This is what I hear from other rappers and producers that were peers of Eric B. and Rakim. Okay. This is the end of part 1 of the video, and I'm going to do 2 more parts to this. So this is the end to part 1.